Hello, everyone, and welcome to our presentation on how to use NLP to create consistent motivation, action, and results. We're very excited to be here, and we appreciate the invitation from Jeanette to present to this great group. We're very excited, and thank you for joining us live, those of you who are here with us now. And thank you for watching a replay if you're watching it later. So I would like to begin by sharing with you our outcomes for today. We will do exercises, we'll have great content. We will give you 5 key takeaways and 2 techniques that you can actually take with you and implement in your life and in your business to create consistent motivation, action, and results. And the way we're going to do it, we'll do a little bit of a round robin. So you'll get to hear from different people. And sometimes it's good to get different perspectives and hear different voices. So I'd like to begin by introducing the team and your presenters tonight. I'll begin with me. My name is Yulia Mama Iva. And I think some of you here know me. We either met in person or became friends on social media. And for those of you who know me, know that when I hit a low point in my life, I actually went through a lot of stress and anxiety, and then ended up in giving up and ended up completely in indifference. So, and at that point, I found NLP. I actually experienced an NLP breakthrough session, which helped me come back up to the surface. I felt like I was going down for 2 years at least. And in 8 short hours of a breakthrough session, it pulled me straight up to the surface. That's what I'm so excited about NLP. And I'm happy to share some of it with you today. Because through my own personal experience, and also after dedicating my time to studying and mastering the tools of NLP, I became a master practitioner. And now I work with clients. And having my own experience and watching the experience of my clients, I am an absolute believer in power of these tools and techniques, and I'm very excited to share it with you because everyone here works very hard in their business, and you deserve the results. You deserve to get what you want, and NLP can actually help you achieve it. But I didn't come along, as you can see. Amy and Dr. John are here with me today, and Amy Follett is my partner in our business coaching, lead coaching. We met at the NLP training and became fast friends and colleagues. We started lead coaching together, and lead stands for live in truth. We believe that by living in truth to yourself and others, you can actually achieve the ultimate freedom. And as entrepreneurs, that's what we all are looking for. At Lead Coaching, we work with clients and we do breakthrough sessions, like I mentioned before. That's something I experienced, and now Amy and I do it with our clients. And we help people to release their limiting beliefs, negative emotions, resolve internal conflicts that cause us to self-sabotage, and ultimately be free to live in truth and achieve the results that we really want, that our desires are to achieve, not somebody else's goals, which is also very important. And usually Amy and I do these presentations together, but today you're in for a treat because Dr. John Ryan, one of our mentors, is joining us today. And Dr. John has been involved in training and development for 25 years. And he is teaching all levels of NLP online now. Both Amy and I are certified through his trainings. And if you have any questions about NLP, either tonight live or later, feel free to reach out to Dr. John because he is a master trainer of NLP. That's the top of the top. There is no better person to ask anything you want to know about NLP. But there is one question that I'd like to address right away. And it is NLP manipulative? Asking this question is almost like asking the question, is a hammer destructive? Because a hammer is just a tool. It can be used to destroy, to break things. It can be also used to build things. Same way with NLP. It's a tool, and it can be used for manipulation, can be also used for influence. So what is really the difference here? It's your intention. It's what you're looking to achieve. If you're doing something for personal gain and don't care about the other person, then yes, it can be called manipulation. But if you're doing it to create a win for somebody else, to inspire the other person, to empower them, then it's influence. And the great part about NLP, it's not that it teaches us all the tools, it also teaches us how to use those tools. Because one of the main principles of NLP is ecology, and it's good for self, good for others, and good for the universe or the community at large. So I encourage you today to take these learnings in, to apply the exercises and take them into your life to create something good for yourself, for people around you, and for the community at large. And with that, I'll pass the mic to Amy so she can introduce herself again and share with you some core concepts of NLP, what is NLP, and why it is important.
Okay,
Amy.
thank you, Yulia. So next slide, Yulia. And as we move forward in the slides, good evening, friends. You can just put the slide up of Dr. John, myself, and you. Perfect. All right. Good evening, friends. Well, first, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being here with us this evening. Time is our most valuable asset, and I honor your time. I trust you will find the information we present useful. And Yulia, thank you so much for creating this opportunity for us to be here with Janae. And Janae, thank you. Friends, it was actually just a couple months ago when I shared with Yulia the idea to present in front of groups. A presentation like this creates the opportunity for us to share our passion for the tools of NLP and how they've impacted us both profoundly. It also creates an opportunity for us to challenge ourselves, our fears, our limiting beliefs, all of the things that might hold us back from putting ourselves in front of you. Neither Yulia and I ever had given a presentation before, and here we are just a couple months later, actively seizing opportunities to present. There's no doubt that the tools and techniques and foundations of NLP, in addition to having a coach and Dr. John Ryan by our side, has absolutely supported us to create consistent motivation, action, and results for our business lit coaching. And this presentation, it's truly a testament to this. So I also want to take a moment and just thank Dr. John Ryan. Thank you for joining us again today. Your generosity, wisdom, and mentorship has touched our lives deeply. And friends, I just want to share with you the information that we're sharing with you this evening. It's valuable, and we can only give you so much in an hour time. So if you feel inspired to do a deeper dive into the studies of NLP, please do follow up with Dr. John's teachings. They're truly the most giving, thorough, and in-depth teachings of NLP I've come across. And there just isn't anybody I can recommend more than Dr. John. Okay, so some context about where I come from. I, like you, am a real estate investor. I am also an entrepreneur, a former restaurateur. I built 2 very successful plant-based restaurants in New York City. And towards the end of 10 years, I began to realize that every time I reached a goal, I felt unfulfilled. Can you relate to that? Like where you succeed, make a success, you reach a goal, and there's just that void inside. So from the outside, it appeared I had it all. And yet internally, I was a mess. Acute anxiety, overwhelm, depression, all of this eventually led me to total burnout. Additionally, the loneliness I felt running my businesses was deeply painful. All of my relationships suffered as a result. And I most definitely was not showing up in my relationships being the person that I want to be. Can anybody relate to this? And have you ever taken a time out, like stepped away from your business or a situation for respite and rest? And then you return to that situation or your work. And as soon as you return, the exhaustion feels 10x from what it was before that self-care break. Well, this is exactly what I experienced again and again and again, and I just couldn't recover. Eventually, I stepped down from my companies, and with a degree in psychology and having spent many, many years in self-development, I knew I needed to get to the root problem holding me back from feeling the joy and fulfillment and meaning that I know is available to us all. It's available for us to experience in our lifetime. And it's now been 2 years since I closed my restaurants. And after working with a coach and experiencing actually 2 breakthrough sessions, I went through a breakthrough session with a coach in relationship, and I also experienced one in career after the relationship breakthrough. I have sincerely experienced profound shifts in my life. The outcome I'm most proud of, the outcome that has taken me from feeling truly despondent to feeling deeply fulfilled, are the relationships I've created. I went from being alone to having a life rich in relationships. And this is because NLP has helped me change how I communicate, first with myself and with others. And I am now living a life true to myself, being who I want to be in my relationships. And this leads me to the next slide, why NLP is so important. Communication is the cornerstone to every relationship. Most importantly, intrapersonal communication, the dialogue we have with ourselves. I'm sure you can all relate to that inner dialogue that just runs the tapes day in and day out. And then the next slide, big picture. Let's look at why NLP is important. NLP can help you improve communications with yourself and others, and it will improve every relationship in your life. NLP can help you program your unconscious mind, take control of your thoughts, manage your emotions, eliminate self-sabotaging patterns. NLP will help you install new behaviors, which will help you get the results that you want and the results that matter to you. Okay, so flashing to the next slide, if our unconscious mind, the negative thoughts and emotions that lead to self-sabotaging patterns, is the primary controller for our experiences, just imagine the results you'd create if you programmed your unconscious mind. And imagine creating consistent results from unstoppable motivation and action. So what is NLP? Moving on to the next slide, let's break down NLP. NLP stands for the acronym Neuro Linguistic Programming. Neuro refers to the mind and the nervous system, the mind-body connection. This is the tool we use to create the results of our life. Linguistic, relating to language. Language is how we understand each other's model of the world. And this happens through communication. How do we communicate with ourselves? And how do we communicate with each other? And then there's programming. And programming refers to patterns. The founders of NLP, Richard Bandler and John Grinder, in the early 70s, they looked at the computer programming, and they used the analogy of the brain as a computer. If we can learn how to program using the basic language of that system, then we can get the system to do what we want. So as NLP coaches, we help our clients identify the patterns of how they do things. We help them identify the patterns that are working, and then we help them identify the patterns that are not working. If we can help people identify patterns, then we can help a person change that pattern. And if we can change a pattern, we can change the programming and we can change the results that we are getting. So big picture, moving on to the next slide, NLP is how the language of the mind, how to use the language of the mind to consistently produce desired results. You may be asking yourself right now, can we program ourselves? This is a big question that people come back at with. Can we program ourselves? And most people think we can't. 100% we can. Yes, we can, and it is happening every day. We are being programmed every day, and if you can get programmed, you can get reprogrammed. Reality is, it's just most people don't know how. So the next slide I want to show you is a quote by Stephen Covey. And you're likely familiar with Stephen Covey. He's the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And in this quote, we see the world not as it is, but as we are, or as we are conditioned to see it. When we open our mouths to describe what we see, we in fact describe ourselves. We're describing our perceptions and our paradigms. And I find this quote very important to present this evening because it helps us understand how we are meaning-making machines and how important it is for us to understand how this directly impacts how we're creating the consistent motivation, action, and results we desire. So let's just dive a little bit deeper and talk about what NLP teaches us about results. In this slide, you're looking at the NLP results model. And what I want you to take away from this slide is that there are events happening externally. And at every given moment, actually every second, we are being hit with 2 million bits of information. So 2 million bits of information are coming at us from these external events every second. And we filter this information through our sensory modality system, which is referred to as our visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory senses. Now, we generally use the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic to filter the bits of information. And as you can see from this image, we're filtering 126 bits of information every second. So there's 2 million bits of information coming at us, and we actually only process 126 bits of that 2 million. So going back to Steve Covey's concept and how we're meaning-making machines, you can understand now if somebody is only taking in 126 bits of 2 million bits of information, the reality that we're creating, it isn't the reality. It's our reality. And if there are 2 million bits of information coming at us all every second, then can you understand now how your reality can be vastly different than another person's reality? Because it's possible that the 126 bits of information that you've processed and filtered is completely different from another person. And you're experiencing the same external event. You're seeing the same external picture. And so this then creates an internal experience. And it's our internal experiences that produce our behavior, which cause us to have either consistent motivation, action, and create results that we want, or not. So let's talk about values. And I'm going to have you pull up the next slide, Yulia, which just says, what are values? And I want to explain values are the deepest level of programming. And so values are extremely important because they also act as a filter. We have the sensory modality system and we have our values. So moving on to the next slide, I'm going to go back to the NLP results model. And now I want you to insert in the filters your values. So we have the external events and the 2 million bits of information coming at us that we're filtering, and we're getting 126. So you may now be curious, how can I increase the number of bits of information that I'm bringing into my system to create that internal experience? Like, wouldn't that be helpful? Well, the reality is that that would be completely overwhelming, and actually we wouldn't be able to make decisions. And we'd just be overstimulated all the time. And in fact, we're overstimulated with 126 bits of information. So the better question to ask is, how do we choose bits of information and improve what we're bringing into our system to create that internal experience to empower the behavior that we're producing, to empower a behavior that's going to produce the consistent motivation, action, and results that we want. And so this is why values become so important in this conversation. My question for you today is, do your values, are they in alignment? Is there coherence between your true values that you're operating from, that are driving your decisions and creating your internal experience that are producing your behaviors, are they aligned with the goals that you're creating for yourself? So values are important, and I'm going to have you flip forward to the next slide, Yulia, which talks about what are values. And in this slide, we see values. Well, they're what's most important to us. They drive everything we do, how we make decisions. They determine if we are fulfilled, and they are the deepest level of programming. So now that we know values are our deepest level of programming and that we can program our unconscious mind, wouldn't you agree to create the desired results? It's imperative that we ensure our unconscious values align to the outcome that we want to create. So I'm going to have you do an exercise. And what I'd love for you to do is just pull out a piece of paper. And this is an exercise where I want you to just allow yourself to be in flow. I don't want you to think. This is an exercise with your unconscious mind. And so whatever words come up for you, write those down on the piece of paper. Okay, so the next slide. All right, the question is, what's most important to you in your business? So take a moment now, and on that piece of paper, just write down, again, the words that are coming to mind without thinking about it. Allow them to come effortlessly and easily, and just write those words down on the piece of paper. What's most important to you in your business? Effortlessly and easily, the words come to you. What's most important to you in your business? Excellent. So now, and I do see a question here. Can we reprogram our values? And yes, we can reprogram our values. And that is why it is so important to identify what are our unconscious values, because oftentimes we have these values that are driving our behaviors, but we really don't know what they are. We haven't consciously chosen them. So that is something that we do through our coaching program, is we help people identify their values and then also reevaluate those values and reprogram them. Okay, so now that you have that piece of paper with the values written on it, I'm going to have you just flip the paper, or if it's big enough, right next to this. And in the next slide, we have one more question here. What's your goal? So if you can take a moment and write down, what's your goal? Beautiful. I see service, quality, honesty. Excellent. Scalable. So what's your goal? And again, easily and effortlessly, just the first thing that comes to mind. What's your goal? Excellent. So this is the exercise that I want you to take away from our conversation. And when you have, I see financial freedom, beautiful. When you have some time, reflect on this. Look at these values and look at your goal and identify, do they align? And if they do not align, that might be one reason that you're not able to create the consistent results, or you might just simply not be feeling fulfilled. And that is as an opportunity to look at those values. And as I shared before, to reprogram those values and create values that do align to the goals that you have in your life, in the area of life that you're working in. And so with that, I'm going to pass the mic over to Yulia. And Yulia is going to take the discussion and talk to us about the elements of a successful outcome. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Amy. Yes, now that we identified our goals, our outcomes, let's take a look at the 3 elements of a successful outcome. And they are knowing what to do, knowing how to do it, and actually doing it, taking action. And in today's day and age, we can all figure out what to do and how to do it. We have all the books, we have unlimited internet resources, we have coaching programs, we have mentors, we have peer support. We can Google and YouTube our way to probably be building a spaceship by now, because all the information is available. The question is, with all that knowledge of what to do and how to do it, are we actually doing it? Are we taking action? And the answer is not always. So let's take a look at why. That brings us to the 20-80 rule. And I'm sure you've heard this before, that 20% of success is knowledge and 80% of success is mindset. We all can get the knowledge. Let's take a look at the mindset, because it's a huge part of the success. And mindset in this equation is more than just our logical mind. It actually has two components, and they're mental component and emotional component. So mental component I like to refer to as our head. It's our thinking, it's our beliefs. And our beliefs can be limiting or they can be empowering. The other component is what I like to call a heart. It's emotional component. That's what it is. It's our emotions, it's our feelings. And our emotions can also be positive or negative. And while our heart and our head are definitely connected and can influence each other, they don't really speak the same language. And we can have empowering beliefs. We can have thoughts in our head that would set us up for success, such as, for example, making cold calls will bring business to our will bring business to our company, or posting on social media is a good way to get visibility. Going live on social media is even better way to get visibility. But what if we feel shy about showing up on social media, or we feel afraid of making those cold calls? That creates an internal conflict, and then we are being torn apart and when getting usually paralyzed and not taking action. Or if we attempt to take action, it's very difficult to do. It also works the same way in the opposite direction. If our feelings and our emotions are inspiring and empowering, we can be, for example, excited about starting a new business or taking it to the next level, or we can feel great about creating generational wealth and living legacy. But if our thoughts don't support us, if our beliefs don't support us, and we think we cannot do it, or we're not good enough, or whatever other disempowering belief that can be on the way, with all those positive feelings, we will also not get too far because of that internal conflict. And while it's possible to power through this conflict, it takes a lot of energy and it's really difficult. I really respect people who can do it, because I've tried and I wasn't very successful at it. But there is another way. That's one other reason why I'm so excited about NLP, is because another definition of NLP is mental and emotional mastery. So just think about it. If we can master the mental component and the emotional component, and they together are responsible for our mindset, which is 80% of success, that's an awesome ROI on learning these tools. So let's take a look at how our head and our heart play a role in creating results. That brings us to the performance equation, which is thinking plus feeling plus behaving equals results. And we all know the definition of insanity. It's doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So in order to get a different result, we actually need to change one or more components of this formula. So let's take a look at behaving. Can we just change behavior on demand? And if you've tried to stop doing something that became a bad habit, you know how difficult it is. Or if you try to just start doing, like Nike slogan, just do it, it usually doesn't work, because we cannot change our behavior directly. Usually our behavior is influenced by our thinking and or our feelings. So let's take a look at feelings. Can we change how we feel directly? Like Think about the time when you were angry and somebody said, "Oh, just calm down." Did you calm down? Did it work? Or did you just escalate from there and tell them, "I'll show you I'm angry"? So it doesn't work. We cannot stop being angry on demand, or we cannot be happy on demand unless we know NLP. And in a little bit, Dr. John will take you through an exercise where you'll be able to experience this. You'll be able to change how you feel in the moment. And that's one of those powerful techniques that you'll get to take with you and implement in your life. And you can change how you feel in the moment if you use NLP tools. So, but before that, let's take a look at the last element of this formula, which is thinking. Again, we cannot change our thinking on demand. We cannot affect it directly. And as an example, just think about something that you know for a fact you cannot do. Like, you know it's impossible. You cannot do it. And now just try it. Try in your head to change it. I can do it. Try to think I can do something that I know full well I cannot. And you may be able to say it to yourself, but will you really believe it? Will it be a real, true thought? I don't think so. Because we cannot change our thinking on demand, again, unless we know NLP. And another exercise Dr. John will take you through will demonstrate how by changing pictures in our head, like Amy mentioned, the events create pictures in our head. And by changing those pictures, we change our thoughts. And by changing our thoughts and our feelings, we'll change our behavior and ultimately change our results. So that's the awesome power of NLP. And before we get to the exercises, let's identify, where do you get stuck? What's slowing you down? Is it something that you're thinking? Is it something in your head? You can also write it down either on a paper or put it in the chat. Just identify what's the most difficult part for you. Is it something in your head? Is it something in your heart? Is it your behavior? Maybe it's all of the above. And whatever it is for you, please don't feel alone, because you're not. We all have these problems. We all have things that getting in our heads, that we feel in our hearts, and that's ultimately slowing us down. And I know it because Amy and I work with clients every day. We go through that all the time too. Those things are common internal obstacles, and that's what we actually specialize in, and that's what we work with our clients. And because we've both been through real estate journey, we've both experienced it, and we know it's not an easy thing to do, and we really care about success of our fellow real estate investors, we would like to offer you a gift. And our gift for you today is a complimentary strategy session. That during this session, we'll go deeper into discovering those internal obstacles that's slowing you down and preventing you from achieving the results. But also will identify the results and your desires, and your outcomes that you really want. We'll talk about why you want, why they're important to you. And after we know the point A where you're at and the point B where you want to be, we'll identify the best path and the best actions you can take to get from point A to point B. So feel free to scan the QR code, or just grab the link and schedule a strategy call. Amy and I will be happy to talk with you, to connect with you, and to help you overcome those internal obstacles. That is our gift for you. And now Dr. John will share his gift with you, and he will take you through those powerful exercises that I mentioned before. Dr. John.
Thank you, Yulia, and thank you, Amy, and also Janae, for having us here on the webinar. And what we want to do now is pull together all the concepts that we've talked about so far: the performance equation, thinking plus feeling plus behaving equals results, as well as the internal pictures. How do we change our internal experience when we have those 2 million bits coming at us? How do we make sure that we're focusing on the right 126 bits that's going to get us going forward? Because as Yulia just said a moment ago, if I am saying something to myself that's not true, it doesn't convince me of it. Like I have $1 million in the bank, and if you don't, it doesn't matter how many times you say it, it doesn't work. Or I'm good at making sales calls. If you're not good at making sales calls, it doesn't really work. So what we want to do is not just talk ourselves into a positive state, but actually change how we feel. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, much like what Amy was talking about earlier with the 126. The 126 bits that we have ability to choose what we look at changes our experience. That quote, by the way, comes from Dr. Wayne Dyer. And again, I'll say it again. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change because you see the world not as it is, but as we are. So if you don't like how things look out there in your bank account, in your relationships, in your health, in the world, then we have to start within. As above, so below, as below, so above, as without, so within, as within, so without. So a change actually happens within. So let's talk about how do we actually do that. Let's start with the head. We'll come back to the heart in just a moment. I'm going to give you a couple tools here to have a little bit of a taste of what NLP actually feels like to kind of work with that. And as Amy mentioned earlier, we have 5 primary sensory modalities: visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Those are the 3 main, and olfactory and gustatory, smell and taste, respectively. We're going to start with the visual. We're going to start with the visual, and I want to teach you a concept inside of the visual called a submodality. So a submodality, if visual is a modality, it's one of the primary modalities that we have. You can think of a picture that you have in your mind, maybe something that motivates you. And I want you to begin to notice, is that picture in black and white or is it in color? So if you don't already have one right now, bring to mind the picture of something that motivates you and just notice for a second, is it in black and white or is it in color? Is it a bright picture or is it a dim picture? For most people, if it's a motivating picture, it's probably going to be in color. Not all people. So if you don't have a in color motivating picture, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. That's just how your brain is encoding this particular image. For most people who feel motivated, it's going to be brighter. Not all people, again, these are just generalizations. Is it near or is it far away? So for most people, if it's motivating, it can be a little bit closer. Although I have found people who have things that really motivate them are really far away. They're long-term thinkers, and the further out, the bigger, the scarier the goal, the more motivated they actually get. So it's really reflection, like Amy mentioned, it's a reflection of what's actually inside of you. So if the visuals that we have, because thinking itself, by the way, is really talking to ourselves, and it's also the pictures that we have. From that, we can derive a feeling, and we're going to change the feelings directly in just a moment. But let's start kind of learning how to program ourselves for success. So I want you again to bring to mind that picture that you have of the thing that's motivating for you. Just go ahead and bring it up to mind. And if you don't see a picture in front of you, that's totally fine. Just have a sense of what that would look like if it were in front of you. And if it's in color, I want you to go ahead and we're going to play with this a little bit. I want to show you how powerful your brain is. Go ahead and take out the color. Make it black and white. Turn it down a little bit. Make it dim. And then shrink it down to the size of a postage stamp. Now, if we were all in a live training room where I could see you all, I'd have you raise your hand and just notice if that motivation has gone down for you. If you're like most people, when you shrink it down, make it dimmer, and you take out any color that exists, you're going to feel a big reduction in that motivation. And now let's push it far away. Push it off in the distance so it's in the lower left-hand corner. Again, about the size of a postage stamp, dark, dim, lower left-hand corner. And now notice, is it still motivating? Is it less motivating? Is it more motivating? Is there any motivation at all? For most people, it's a reduction. And for some people, about 10 to 20% of any general audience, we find that there's zero motivation. So think about what you just did. You took something that was motivating by the way you looked at it. You didn't change what was in it. Again, we're not changing what we're looking at. We're changing how we're looking at things. And when you do that, the world begins to shift. You took that motivating thing and you reduced it down to very little or nothing. Now, you might be saying, why would I want to do that? You wouldn't. You wouldn't want to do that. But we did it just temporarily to show you how powerful your mind is, because we do this all the time. We take things that we want and we make them not appealing. We take things that we don't want and we make them right in front of us, big and scary and in full color. And that's demotivating for us. So we're going to put this back. I promise we'll put this back. So I want you to, in just a moment, we're going to put it back to where it was. But before we pull it back in the right position, go ahead and make it life size again. Make it the right optimal size to maximize your motivation in that lower left-hand corner. Make it color, if it was in color, whatever is bright, make it the brightness you need it to be. And then imagine that there's like a slingshot, or there's a tension between the picture and where it belongs. And the count of 3, we're just going to have it kind of zoom at 100 miles an hour right back into the exact location it needs to be optimally motivating for you. Ready? Now let's do this together. 1, 2, 3. Just go ahead and move it right back in place at the optimal level. Not too much. I don't want you to achieve your goals too fast. Just put them at the right level for you, and then keep those changes exactly where they are. Now, that's not an NLP technique in terms of we go around demotivating people, but it's a simple technique that you can use to realize, man, I am doing this all the time unconsciously. What would happen if I became intentional? What if I took the goal that I want and I made that front and center and made it bright? Or the behavior that I don't feel like I want to do, what if I improved the color and made it compelling so that I wanted to do it? Not that I was scared of it, but I was excited to do it. Because oftentimes it's the things that we don't want to do that are the most important to us in terms of creating our success and results. The question was asked earlier in the chat, can you change your values? And Amy, of course, said, yes, you can. Our values change all the time. Your values are not the same as they were when you were, in the 3rd grade. As you get in different stages of your life, your values naturally evolve. Where we find in NLP this comes into play is that values organically change, but sometimes they don't change as fast as we want them to. So maybe something is still true to us and it's something we find important, but it's based out of fear. It's based out of anger, resentment, or hurt, or some pain that we've been through, and we don't want to go through it anymore. And so our number one value in relationship is safety. But you're not in a dangerous relationship anymore, but it's still safety because we have baggage on that. The only way that we would have safety as number one in our relationship values is if we have pain that we're holding on to. I had this exact experience with someone who had safety as number one, and we went through the process that Amy and Yulia specialized in, which is breakthroughs. And at the next day, we checked on those values again, and safety wasn't even on the list. It was an old pattern that was there. And once you clean that up, your values automatically, and if they don't automatically change, that's okay. That's what NLP is for. We can also do the same thing with our visualizations. Now, please, with all warnings of seriousness, do not start doing this with your values unless you are trained in NLP and know what you're doing, because values are pretty deep programming, and you wouldn't go into like the the machine language or the zeros and ones in your computer and start messing around with the coding unless you actually knew how to do programming. So make sure you're working with someone who knows what they're doing. But that's a quick example of the visual. Let's also play with the kinesthetic. Let's play with that heart. And so let's go back. Yeah, there you go. So to do the heart technique, we have to connect to an emotion. The quality of our life is really determined by the feelings that we have on a consistent basis. And there's two ways we experience them. One is when they happen to us. The other is the ones that we create. The illusion that we often operate under is that I'm not in charge of my emotion. I'm not in charge of how I feel about things. The reality is things do happen and we have an emotional response. If our emotional response is going in the negative, then we got to switch that, because the reality is our emotional state is under our control. We just tend to think it's not. So let me teach you a real simple technique that can help you reclaim that power. Because if people can say things or do things, or things can happen around us that cause us to feel a certain way, well, the reality is we're giving our power over to that person, that situation, or that behavior. And to be empowered means to claim our power and really remember what it was like to be in that power. So to do that, I want to teach you a quick process called anchoring. And to do that, I'm going to have to ask you to remember a time that you felt a specific state. So let's think about motivation. In the context of real estate investing, motivation is a really important one, because we have a million things that we can do instead of the important things that we should be doing. So to stay in that motivated state, let's create a quick anchor or a trigger that we can use anytime we want to get in that motivated state. So conditioning, anchoring is really based on conditioning response, Pavlovian conditioning, where we have trigger and response. Advertisers know how to do this. Yulia mentioned the just do it concept earlier today, because advertisers put millions of dollars every year in advertising to get us to associate positive things to their product or their service. Well, we can do the exact same thing. We can take that power and create a trigger for ourselves. And what I encourage you to do is, first of all, let's identify the trigger that you want to have. We're not going to go into a full discussion on how to do anchoring, but we'll just go through the process together. And so that trigger could look like this. It could be touching a knuckle. It could be touching your two fingers together. It could be touching your wrist. It could be touching an earlobe. We're going to do a kinesthetic anchor, something that you can touch. Try to keep it innocuous, something you can do anytime, anywhere, because if you want to get motivated and you're in a meeting, it's much more subtle to kind of touch two fingers together than to go, yes. And that could also be disruptive for the meeting. So let's find something really simple and easy that you can do, like touching your fingers together, touch a knuckle. And I don't want you to touch your fingers yet. Instead, we have to get in the state. Because what anchoring is about is anything that you do while you're in a peak state, an intense emotional state. This happens both positive and negative. We're going to use a positive one today. That gets connected to that trigger, the trigger and response, such that later on, anytime you touch the knuckle, touch the finger, touch the anchor, or facilitate that, you are evoking that response, that emotional response, rather than waiting for it to happen. So if you've ever wanted to have motivation but weren't sure how to get there, this is the shortcut to make that happen. So let's go and do it. To do that, you're going to have to trust your unconscious mind. Now, this means you got to play a little bit. I've had people in the past say, it was hard for me to get into that state. Well, if you're trying to get motivated, let's do motivation. If you want to do another state, you're welcome to do that. If you're trying to get motivated and your physiology is like this, you're on the couch and you're leaning back and you're like, I don't really feel motivated. Well, yeah, you're not going to feel motivated because that's not a very motivating physiology. I want you to think back to a time that you were motivated. Sit the way you would sit when you were in that position. If you need to stand the way you stood back then and really connect to that physiology. See what you saw. And I'm going to take you through the script in a moment, but really get back into that. And you have to play a little bit. If you, the amount you play is the results you're going to get. It's true in life and true in this exercise as well. So I'm going to guide you through. Go ahead in your mind, recall a time. Can you remember a time in the past when you felt that motivation? Can you remember a specific time? And by the way, anytime you feel that emotion coming up, go ahead and touch that finger, touch the knuckle. Go back to that time now. Float down in your body, see what you saw, hear what you heard, and really feel those feelings of feeling that motivation. And just go ahead and touch that knuckle, fire off that trigger, get into that state, and feel that motivation. Awesome. Now let's do this again. I want you to practice a little bit. Practice makes perfect. And of course, it's perfect practice that makes perfect. But let's do a little repetition here. Now, remember another time that you felt motivated. Go back to another time. Think back to another time. If you can't remember, just pretend for a moment what it would be like to sit, stand, or to be motivated. Go back to that time right now. Float down in your body, looking through an eye, see what you saw, hear what you heard, and really feel the feelings of feeling that motivation. When you feel that peak, that come up, just go ahead and touch that knuckle, touch that finger together, whatever you're doing as that trigger. And then when it starts to come down, simply let go and allow that trigger to be established. Nice. Now let's do it one more time. Third time's the charm. So can you remember another time that you felt motivated? Dig deep. I know there's got to be another time. Go back. Find that time. Step into that experience, looking through your own eyes. See what you saw then. Hear what you heard then. Say what you said to yourself then, and really feel that feeling of feeling motivation. When you have that come up, just go ahead and lock that feeling in as well. Awesome. Feels good. Awesome. I'm on the East Coast. It's late at night, but I'm feeling motivated. I hope you are as well. Okay, fantastic. Now, shake it out a little bit. We're going to test this out because the real test is when you kind of get to a neutral state. And then what I want you to do is go ahead and fire off that trigger, fire off that anchor, touch the knuckle, touch your fingers together, whatever you want to do, and just feel that motivation come up. Awesome. If you felt anything, congratulations, you started anchoring yourself. If you didn't feel anything, congratulations, because you're trying it out. That's fine. And practice makes perfect. If you didn't get the full feeling of the motivation, it comes down to intensity and accuracy. That's okay. Reach out to Amy or Yulia. They can also help you out and give you some guidance, or myself. I'm happy to give you some suggestions on how to connect with that. So those are two very introductory techniques, just to kind of give you a sense that we're more in charge of this computer. As Amy mentioned earlier, neurolinguistic programming the idea of computer. And once we learn how to speak the language of the mind, the visual, the auditory, and the kinesthetic, we have much more power in changing our thinking, our feeling, and behavior to produce the results. Because that's what it's about. As a real estate investor, you think about why you're doing this. Amy brought up the concept of values earlier. Values are what's important to us. Values drive us. They are the deepest level of our programming. You don't just do real estate investing or really any business because you just want to be busy. You want to fulfill your values. You probably value freedom. You value impact. You value helping other people. You value building a dream or building a legacy, like Yuli mentioned earlier, and like generational wealth. Those values are important to you. And if you want to achieve those results, what often happens, and this is one of the biggest challenges that we all find in working with solopreneurs and entrepreneurs, is putting themselves first by setting boundaries. It's easy when we work a 9 to 5 to set boundaries because we have expectations set out. But when we're doing our own thing, when we have to set our schedule on when we're going to do calls and follow-ups and schedule deals and things like that, when we have too much time, it's almost a curse. When you have a 9 to 5, you like, I wish I had more time. But when you have unlimited time, then it's like we need structure. And to do that, I want to give you guys a very special gift to add on to the one that Yuli and Amy are sharing with you with their time. Is a course I think will be very helpful for you. It's something I found, it's one of my favorite programs of all time. It's an introduction to NLP. It's called Assertive Communication and Boundary Setting. And it's how to use NLP. It's how to use psychology to really set boundaries for yourself and do it in such a way that actually can improve the relationship you have with others and yourself, because you're valuing yourself at the same level as the people around you. So many times we either act out in a way that's like myself first, and then we burn relationships, or I put the other person first and my needs never get met. How do we find that balance and harmony and do it in a respectful way? To connect with this, you can use the QR code, and you can also go to freenlpcourse.com. And the secret coupon I want to give you to make this completely free for you, it's a completely free program, $500 off the program, $495 or something like that, is REI. And there's a limited quantity of those out there, so make sure you go and take advantage of that. So go to this website, click on the QR code, and make sure you put in the coupon code when you're checking out. That'll make it completely free for you. I don't know what the exact number is we have out there, but when they're gone, they're gone. So please take advantage of that and go check it out. And hopefully you can enjoy that course. It'll add value to you on top of the other offer, which we had earlier, which was to connect with Amy and Yulia directly. So we're going to put up the next slide, Sharon. So there's the links to connect for that free complimentary session, that strategy call, the clarity call, and also a free course to kind of supplement. So I recommend go ahead and take care of both. So thank you all so much for watching and being part of this, and also for participating. And hopefully you got some value in our conversation today. And also want to turn it back over to Yulia for wrapping up comments, and so we can pull it all together and drive it home. Yulia?
Yes, thank you, Dr. John. Yes, and that concludes our presentation today. So if you have any questions, please post them in the chat.
Thank you, Yulia and Dr. John.
Thank you so much to all of you for showing up and taking the time to present this to my audience.
Thank you, Janae.
Have a good day.
Pleasure.
Good night.